Okay, so I guess we are live on YouTube. This is my first time trying that, so please be indulgent because I will. Oh, now I can hear myself. Okay, so yeah, so basically, I wanted to do a first YouTube live to chat about my switch from Nikon to Fujifilm. I've done a lot of videos on it, and if you go on my YouTube channel, first of all, thank you so much for all this support on my YouTube channel. I started that channel without any, real goals in terms of subscribers and getting interactions and so on and so forth. And the response has been so amazing. Again, I said it multiple times, but I learned so much throughout that experience. And I also am very, very thankful for everyone who's following me on this channel and also on Instagram and all the other platforms where I post my work. So before I wanted to go into the live Q&A, and maybe nobody will show up, and that's totally fine. This is my first one, so this kind of serves as a test. So I have a couple questions that I gathered through the questions I got on my channel. And I'm going to wait a couple minutes. This is just to see if the stream is actually working right now. Uh, but I got a couple questions that people ask me, and a lot of people are asking me about the fact that Fujifilm is a APS-C sensor, and it's not a full frame like my Nikon D750. And how do I like it? How was the switch? The switch was actually very, very easy. I've tried other cameras, other mirrorless cameras like the Sony. I've had the Sony for a couple weeks, and I didn't really like it. I didn't like it because of the actual feel in the hand, and some people might actually think that this is not a real problem, but for me it is actually. If the camera doesn't feel right in my hand, it will not entice me to shoot. And obviously we all want to be inspired by the tools that we use. But before I go into the questions again, I just want to mention that tools are just tools, right? So being creative or living a more creative life doesn't involve any tool. You just have to be in the right mindset. You just have to focus on actually making sure that you are expressing your story or telling your story as best as you can, and then actually get the tools that you need to tell that story. I see that there's two people watching right now, so that's pretty cool. So we'll get the room fill up with let's aim for 5 people. Let's aim for 5 people. I'm just gonna say hello to all. We are about to start. So, in the goal for these little sessions that I'm doing here live, again, it's really a way for me to learn and to interact with new people maybe that don't know the channel, and again, maybe defining what this channel actually could be. Because again, I've been doing videos for a couple years on and off, but I really want to get back at producing regular videos and trying to add value to people's life. And I'm not pretending that I'm gonna that I'm gonna change people's life or that I'm gonna create enormous value. But one thing's for sure is that I know the struggles that people have to try to live a more creative life. I also know a couple things about gear. So again, if there's things that I can share with you that can inspire you or that can actually help you with your decisions when it comes to telling more engaging stories, and ultimately have a bit of an insight about the gear, then that could be very interesting. Um, so I guess we'll just start with the first question. So the first question comes from a guy named Benjamin, and he's a friend from France. Actually, I don't know him personally, but we've been exchanging a lot of emails and also comments on my YouTube channel. So thank you so much, Benjamin, for being so active on my platforms. I really like the interactions, and he was asking about the settings that I was using with the X Pro 2 and the XT2, the two of my favorite cameras right now. And I was back then telling him that I was shooting a lot of JPEG. because again, I picked up these cameras, the Fujifilm X Pro 2. That was my first kind of real serious Fujifilm camera. And what I did is that I start shooting raw like everybody else, coming from the DSLR world, and especially coming from the Nikon world. You either shoot raw or you don't shoot at all, right? So that was kind of the way to use your cameras, because you want to have kind of the flat profile and then do all your edits in Lightroom or whatever software you use to edit your photos. So I started shooting RAW, and I switched it to JPEG because I've heard so many good things about the JPEG quality of the Fujifilm X Pro 2, and before that the X100 that I was also using. And I started to use the two main film simulations. The first one is the Classic Chrome. I am a big fan of kind of like very faded colors, but at the same time, high contrast. So this is one thing that I really find interesting about the Classic Chrome profile in the Fujifilm cameras, is that it really entices you to think about the story you're trying to tell, and you're not using like kind of the colors, or you're not using you're not trying to cheat. Basically, you really have to have a very good subject, a very cool scene, or a very good story to tell in order to be able to translate that into a photo. So Classic Chrome, I really entice you to go into the menu and put your cameras on Classic Chrome and try to shoot with that profile. Another profile that I really like on the Fujifilm X Pro 2, X-T2 is the Acros, so the black and white. I've always been a huge fan of black and white, and the cool thing about that is that this Acros film simulation, it literally replicates the Acros film, like the actual film itself, and the way they treat the black, and the way that the contrast is, again, the micro contrast is being rendered, is absolutely stunning. So Acros, and when I shoot portraits in black and whites with the Acros JPEG film simulation, I usually put Acros plus G, actually. That gives a really nice skin tone, very soft, and actually I find that this is really good for portraits, but just the Acros regular film simulation is actually pretty good. I see that we're now 5 people. We're 1 people away from having a full house of 5 people. Again, I just want to reiterate that this is my first ever Google Hangout live. I don't know if that's the actual way you call that. I'm gonna go here in the control room. I'm all figuring out this stuff. I have like actually 4 windows open right now. So again, bear with me as I figure out how to live stream on YouTube. So Benjamin, again, thank you so much for your question. I hope I answered it correctly, and I thought that this was a great question because a lot of people see photos um, on my YouTube channel, but also on my Instagram and my 500px profile, and basically you want to know how I shoot it, how I shot it, and here are my 2 secrets. Basically, it's 90% of the time Classic Chrome and Acros when you see some black and white. All the shots you saw in San Francisco or in Costa Rica, most of them are, again, 90% of them are using these 2 profiles. Another profile that I tend to use when I do landscape is a bit of Velvia. I know some people don't like that profile in the Fujifilm cameras, but Velvia is a very powerful film simulation because it really enhances the colors. It really basically use the contrast it renders the contrast in a very unique way. So if you do landscape, and some people were asking, is the X-T2 or the X Pro 2 good for landscape? And I would say yes. Again, I come from the DSLR world, full frame D750, and yes, full frame has a lot of advantages when it comes to landscape. But again, I haven't. If you put a 10 to 24 lens on the X-T2 or the X Pro 2, I think you would be surprised on the quality and the actual wide view that you can get with these mirrorless cameras and APS-C sensors. So, Benjamin, that was a very good question, and I hope I answered it well. Another question that I got in the comments of the YouTube channel is I'm going to read it. It's from Harris Babik. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. So sorry if I'm butchering your name. So Harris was asking, well, actually was saying, thanks for the video. Actually really impressed with the smooth focus transition in my videos on YouTube. If you don't mind me asking, what setup do you use to record these videos? This is a great question. This is not a Fujifilm related question, but I think it's a good one, because if you want to start your own YouTube channel, there's a couple cameras that you should consider if you want to start vlogging, or to start basically sharing content with the outside world. Actually, right now I see the little level. I think you guys can hear the audio. If you cannot hear the audio, please let me know in the live chat box. And if you can hear the audio, let me know. Give me a thumbs up, because again, first time I'm streaming this. So a couple cameras that you want to consider. I actually have one here. So, oh, and I literally opened it. So this is the uh, Canon G7X. And I cannot say enough good things about the Canon G7X. This is my preferred camera when it comes to run and gun, when I'm traveling, when I'm actually shooting even some reviews. This has the flip up or flip out, or I don't know how you say that. We're actually recording now. Huh. It's easy to use. You can just set it on auto. It actually tracks the face very, very well. So when you're doing vlogging style shoots, this camera comes in very handy. It's also very lightweight. It's very robust. One thing that I would recommend if you are into vlogging, you might want to get one of these micro muff little accessories here. Because the onboard microphone on the G7X is not really good, so it picks up the wind, it picks up anything that's ambient noise. So it looks a bit silly to put a little dead cat on your microphone here on top, but it actually enhance your onboard sound. So really highly recommended G7X. It's a very popular camera when it comes to vlogging. But again, there's a reason why it has very, very good autofocus. This is just the first version actually, and it works very well for me. It also has decent battery life, and it's built like a tank. I've dropped this thing multiple times and it still works, so highly recommend it. That being said, so this is to answer Harris' question. It was the Canon G7X that I was using until today, because I just literally ordered a camera that I think will up my game when it comes to the quality of the actual stories I'm telling on YouTube, or the content that I'm sharing on this channel. And it's the Lumix G85. I'm very impressed. I've seen a lot of videos, a lot of reviewers talking about this camera very highly. So I can't wait to receive it. Ordered it. I should receive it pretty shortly. So you guys can let me know if you see a difference between the videos that have been filmed with the G7X and the videos that I will be posting shortly, because I should receive it pretty shortly. Another camera that I use to shoot my videos is this is the GoPro. How can I forget the name of this camera? This is a very important camera in my rig, because this is the smallest camera. It shoots 4K. This is the GoPro Hero Session 5. And as you can see, it's all rigged up with a floating system, because as you can imagine, I bring that everywhere I go. And sometimes I go into water. There's actually a vlog coming up pretty shortly in Costa Rica where I take this in a waterfall, and then it drops, and then it's in the water, out the water. And the microphone is actually pretty decent on this little GoPro Hero Session 5. So highly recommend this camera if you are into vlogging, because you need a camera that's actually waterproof, or actually that you can bring everywhere you go, and where you don't have to bring a big camera that's not a big camera, but that's not waterproof. So and again, it shoots 4K, so I've experimented with it, but on my channel I'm mostly producing content 1080p, 30 frames per second, 60 depending, and sometimes 24. But it's always good to know that you have the 4K capability on there. So I'll be testing it and editing the 4K footage shortly. So I'll be able to report on how how this performs for me. Uh, Speaking of the G85 that I can't wait to receive, I should be receiving it in the next few days, few weeks. So I hope it's going to be sooner than later. It's actually back ordered right now. It's a very popular camera, and there's a reason why. It's a vlogger dream, if I may say. This is a camera that will allow you to shoot 4K, 60 frames per second, so you can do some very nice slow motion. This is pretty cool, but also a camera that's very lightweight. It's a micro four third camera, so I will test the low light situation there. I'm not sure if it's going to be performing very well, but I've heard that it's not that bad and that the autofocus is also pretty cool. So this is my kind of my vlogging kit, and this is how I get some smooth shots and some pretty decent images. I'm not a videographer, so sometimes you'll see some out of focus shots, sometimes you'll see some not so good audio, but again, I'm trying to learn, and that's the whole reason why I have this YouTube channel, is to exchange with you guys and get my photography and videography to a whole other level. Another question that came in through the chat or through the comment box on my YouTube channel is one from Manzoor007. And he was asking the following question, or he was saying, I'm torn between the X Pro 2 and the X-T2 for street photography. Currently shoot with the X100T, very good camera. And what's your choice between the two for street photography? In comparison, a comparison video would be great. I think I'll do a video at one point because I own both the X-T2 and the X Pro 2. And these are, again, very, very, very capable cameras. They're both 24 megapixel. This one here is a bit bigger if you look at the form factor, but at the same time, the grip here is also bigger. So if you have big hands, you might want to consider the Fujifilm X-T2. And you can also put a what you call a booster grip, which makes it a little bit more like a DSLR. So you have your, front or top shutter button, and then if you turn it like that, you also have your side button, and you have all your controls, like the joystick here that you can see, and you can also use the wheels here to control the camera. So that's the X-T2, so a little bit bigger. So to answer your question, Manzer, I think if you look at the X Pro 2, that would be my choice for street photography. This is a discrete camera. It doesn't scream like a big, DSLR. Actually, people think that this might be like an old school rangefinder camera. That's it's inoffensive. I got my best shots, my best street photography shots with the X Pro 2. So the X Pro 2, I think it screams for some prime lens. I usually use zoom lens. Right now I have the 56 on it, but I usually use zoom lens with my Fujifilm X-T2. And on my X Pro 2, right now I have the 35. This is f2, and this is just a perfect combination for the X Pro 2. So I really like this one for street photography. A nice little addition that you might want to consider also if you're into street photography. So this is the thumb. This is the thumb. I don't know what to call that. To rest your thumb, basically, because if you have big hands and you are shooting like that, your thumb is like it doesn't know where to sit. So this gives it a very cool. It just goes into the flash mount, and there's actually even a motion like that where you can use your dials, but when you put it back like that, your thumbs rest here and it just feels right. So this is my camera of choice. Manzer, who asked the questions if I would go X Pro 2 or X-T2 for street photography, it's the same. It's the exact same sensor, so you'll get the same quality, but in terms of look and feel, especially feel, I would definitely use the X Pro 2. And again, I don't think you want to do videos. I think that was your question. So you don't need the 4K from the Fujifilm X-T2. And again, very great camera for the X Pro 2. And we do have a first ever live question. I'm going to drink some water, because this is my first ever live question. So thank you so much, Adapted Lenses, because you are the first one who is asking a question. And the question is, hey, Fred, have you used the 50mm f2? No, I haven't used the 50 mil f2. I have a lot of lenses. I have the 35, I have the 23, I have the 16, I have the 50 to 140, I have the the 10 to 24, the 16 to 55. But no, never used the 50. It's kind of a weird range, right? Because if you add the crop factor to it, 1.5 or 1.6, it kind of gives you like a, like, I don't know, 90 millimeter range. So I'm not sure how I would use it. I think it's kind of a portrait lens. Um, but at the same time, it's in a weird range for me. I know some people are actually raving about it. I know the angry photographer just got his, and he's got a video where he is surprised by the quality. He didn't want to like this lens, and he ended up liking it very, very, very good. So we'll see, but maybe I'll get it. Right now, I'm satisfied. Actually, let me show you a couple lenses I own and tell you why I don't think I need another Fuji lens. So first of all, the 16 millimeter. I have a question coming up about this. Um, the 16 millimeter is one of the greatest lens Fujifilm produce, I think. So if you are into a kind of wide, not too wide, but kind of wide lens, and this is a f 1.4, so you can still get some very, very shallow depth of field, but at the same time, it's a lens that can shoot basically in the dark. So I would recommend the 16 for sure. Other prime lens, we got the 23 millimeters. I have mixed feelings about the 23 millimeters. I made a video. It was called X Pro 2 plus 23 millimeter, the ultimate setup, and it had an interrogation mark at the end because I was super excited about this lens, but I ended up putting back my 35 mil for street photography, and I prefer that zoom range. Sorry, not that zoom range, but that focal length. So again, it all depends on how I'm feeling, but I highly recommend it. But I find it a little bit too wide for my taste, for street photography at least. And then we go. Oh, so I forgot the beast. My preferred lens is actually the 56 1.2. This is a bulkalicious lens. If you are into portrait photography, you have to own this lens. This is an 85 millimeter equivalent on a full frame, and this produced some awesome, crazy, bokeh in the background. And it's not the fastest to focus. You won't get, super fast autofocus with this 56 1.2. But again, But again, it's all about the bokeh. It's all about the quality, the details. It's super sharp. But again, it's a bit slow. But this is a portrait lens. So this is my favorite Fuji lens at the moment. And now into the zoom lens. So I talked about the 10 to 24, and if you are into landscape photography, I would recommend this one with a couple filters. It has image stabilization. So you know that the Fujifilm cameras don't have the in-body image stabilization. So if you don't want any camera shake, you have to look for this little thing here. You see the OIS, so optical image stabilization. So it's a very, very cool feature that you find on some of the Fujifilm lenses. So that's the 10 to 24, and this is the workhorse. This is your 24 to 70 equivalent. This is the 16 to 55. It's not stabilized, but it's 2.8 all the way through. It's considered kind of a pro lens for Fuji. So highly recommend that one if you want a workhorse for your professional work. And then you have your 50 to 140, so equivalent to like 70 to 200, a little bit more than 200 actually. And this is also 2.8 all the way through. So very I like this lens very much. So this is kind of the lens I owned. I think it's enough. So to go back to the questions about the 50 millimeters f2, again, I don't feel that I should cover that focal length with another lens. But again, I might listen to the angry photographer too much and maybe ended up maybe selling one of my lenses that I own and try it, or even renting it. That's another very good option if you want to try some lenses. You should definitely rent before you buy. Fujifilm sometimes have some pretty cool promotions where you can actually rent a lens for free for a couple of days and then bring it back to your camera store. I know in Canada, here in Montreal, at Lozo Photo, we were able to do that. So yeah, I have another question coming from the live feed. Oh my god, I have 9 people watching right now. I'm so excited. This is the beginning of something. Maybe I'll do some Q&A sessions, some live Q&A session more often, if you guys do find value in that. So John Spiro is asking, how is the X Pro 2 EVF versus the XT2? Very good question. The X Pro 2 EVF, I find, is actually better, is actually brighter. I prefer the X Pro 2 EVF. I lost the eye cup. This is the eye cup. This is war side effect, I guess. But ultimately, I really find that this EVF is just crazy. It's crazy bright. It's big, and so I really like it. And I do find it brighter than the XT2, and I think the number of pixel is a bit different, and it's due to some technology and some engineering that they couldn't bring to the XT2. So I find it a bit weird. Maybe I'm wrong, but in my experience, the XT2 and the X Pro 2, they don't have the same exact EVF. And again, I prefer the EVF on the X Pro 2. So I would encourage you to go to your local shop or camera store to see that and for yourself and basically make your own decision. But I would say that, again, the X Pro 2 EVF is bigger, brighter. So thank you so much for the question, John. This is really appreciated. Let me go on with the other questions that I got through the comments or through Twitter. And if you want to ask me questions on Twitter, it's very easy. You can find me at Fred Ranger on all the platforms. So if you go on Twitter, if you go on Instagram, 500px, on Twitter, on Facebook, so you can find me on all these platforms. I'll actually put I'll try that here at Fred Ranger. There you go. So if you want to follow me on any of the platforms or ask me questions for the next Q&A, because I kind of like that now. Tyler is asking a new question. Hi, Tyler. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. What are your thoughts on the 16 millimeter versus the 10 to 24? Yeah, that's a question actually that was asked in the comments, and that's a very good one because let me find the question. Yeah, Alain, I'm French, right? So I can pronounce the French names. Alain Monens 8. Alan Monens. Anyways, I'm butchering the names. Said, hi, Fred. Why take the 16 millimeter along next to the 10 to 24? Thanks in advance, Alan. And also, Tyler just asked live the same question about, kind of the same question about the 10 to 24 versus the 16 millimeter. So I would go and answer that question very, very easily. If I know what I'm going to shoot, if I know that I'll need the 1.4, again, this is a 1.4 f1.4 lens. This is a f4. I think it goes to f4. Yeah. So there's a difference in the amount of light that these lenses are actually letting in. So f4 doesn't give you the same amount of light. F4 is actually a darker lens, if I may say, and the 16 millimeter is f1.4, so it's a brighter light. It lets in more light. So if I know what I'm going to shoot and I know the condition that I'm going to shoot it in, I will actually bring the 16 millimeter. And if I know that I need a shallow depth of field, if I know that I'll also need to let in a lot of light, and also if I also need a very, very sharp image, I will tend to default to the 16 millimeter. This is one of the sharpest lenses I've seen from Fuji. That and the 35 millimeter. Where's my 35? It's on my X Pro 2. That and the 35 millimeter f2. I think these are two of the sharpest lenses that Fujifilm produced. But if I'm on a trip, and if I don't exactly know what I'm going to shoot, and I'm on a trip and I want, run and gun type of situation, I will bring the 10 to 24 and I will try to make it work. It also has image stabilization, so I kind of get 1 or 2 stop advantage when I use this lens. And I like to put filters on that lens. So I'll either use an ND filter or I'll use, other type of filters, polarizer and so on and so forth. So that lens, when I'm traveling, definitely bringing with me, along with the 16 to 55. I tend to bring zoom lens when I travel. But again, if I know what I'm going to shoot, I know the condition, I know what the light situation will be, I might actually bring the 16. So I hope that answers your question, Tyler. And I think you had a follow-up question. Also, more to add in, I thought about getting the 10 to 24 and buying the Rokinon 12 millimeter f2 for low light situations. I've heard tremendous thing. Oh my god, did I do the tremendous like the other guy who says tremendous all the time? I erase that from your memory. But I've heard some very 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 good things about the Rokinon. I've heard many photographers going for it. I'm just a bit. I never know about like using third-party lens or lens that are not made or built for the Fuji system. I'm new again to the Fuji ecosystem, so for me, it's I would have to try it. Actually, if you do ended up buying it, Tyler, please report back and let us know, because that's something that I haven't tried yet. If you see, all my lenses are Fuji, and I tend to stick with the Fujifilm ecosystem. And Tyler, if you can let us know like what would be the price. I wouldn't be able to afford both personally, although I'd love to. Yeah, that's the other problem with these lenses. They're not cheap. They're not cheap, but there's a reason why they're not cheap. I mean, the build quality of these Japan-made, weather-resistant for the most part lenses is there's a price to pay for that. But the Rokinon, again, I've been hearing a lot of good things. And again, it's a 12 millimeter. It's actually wider than the 16. So you might get some pretty cool results from the Rokinon too. So Tyler, thank you so much for the question. Thank you for the comment. And if you do ended up buying it, please report back. Another live question from John. Thank you again, John, for your question. What do you miss the most from Nikon? Well, I can tell you what I don't miss at all, and a couple things. The first one is the weight of the system. Oh my God, was it a heavy system with the 70 to 200, the 24 to 70, the 10 to 24, the 85, all awesome lens. These are actually, I think they were, the best lens in the market 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago. And actually, even, when it was the film era, the 70 to 200, oh my God, I've seen it on every single concert that I've been to, that and the Canon, of course. But what I miss the most, I think, is basically the fact that it was the most responsive system I've seen out there. So like the actual responsiveness of the system. But again, we're talking about two completely different systems. We're talking about one that doesn't have a mirrorless system, and you see through the lens. You don't see an image. There's no like television in the camera. But again, it was the responsiveness of the system that made it so reliable. Also, the toughness. When I take my Fujifilm X-T2, I do feel that it's really, really well built. Sorry about that. That it's really, really well built. But you don't want to drop this one. And I cannot remember how many times I've dropped my Nikon 750. I tend to drop things. So, I mean, maybe that's why I don't have the iCup anymore. Maybe I dropped it somewhere. I don't know where it is. But it was built like a tank. And I started my Nikon journey, if I may say, with the D80. That was my first Nikon camera. And again, I was blown away by the build construction, the image quality too. And then I went to the D300S, which was a huge bump, and the low ISO was very, very good. That was my introduction to low light photography and the flash photography. So very, very reliable system. And then I went to, I think, one of the best camera of basically all time, and that is the D750. Sorry, the D700. D700. There's a reason why that was the preferred camera for wedding photography and also for sport. I mean, some people were using it for sport, but mainly for wedding and portrait. It was basically the same thing as a D3, but in a smaller body. Back then, it was revolutionary because you got the low light situation that you can cover, and you can bring your gear everywhere you want it. I actually have a video that it's popping up right now. I can see it. I'm not sure you can see it, but it's called it's actually my first vlog, Fred Ranger videocast. No, it's my 16th vlog. So if you go back in the history, you'll see a video with the title "What's in My Concert Photography Bag," and you will see that my bag has shrunk throughout the years, and now that I'm on the Fujifilm system. But back then, that was my system, and I loved it. I think what I missed the most about Nikon is not the image quality, it's not the actual brand itself, because I don't think that I don't consider Nikon being a super customer centric brand, especially in the past few years. But what I miss the most is the D700. That was the best camera again, I think, in a long time, in modern photography era, modern digital photography era. And then I went to the D750, and this is where I started to look at the camera and say, why is that so big? And all these new cameras, Olympus, Sony. I considered Sony for a long time. And then I discovered, well, I didn't discover it. If you go back again in history on my vlogs, when I went to Italy, that's now, holy crap, 8 years ago or 7 years ago, I brought two systems, the whole Nikon system with every lenses that you can imagine. And I brought this new little camera back then that was, oh, that was 6 years ago, because the Fujifilm X100 is now 6 years. So I brought the X100, like the original one, and the Nikon gear. And I ended up shooting, if I go back to my Lightroom metadata, I ended up shooting, I would say 85 to 90% of my shots with the Fujifilm X100. Why? Well, first of all, size, I had it on me at all time. And secondly, I was like, holy beep, the image quality is so good on these little cameras, and it didn't even have a mirror in it, and it was not a full frame, and all these buzzwords. So this is where I discovered Fuji, but I kind of considered it as a second camera back then, and I considered it as a camera that I was using when I was traveling, and not for serious work. So basically what I did is I left it in my bag most of the time when I was going, on some shoots. But I was using it again as a second camera. I even did some. I even did some videos with it. Quality was really not good. But again, it was my introduction to Fuji, the Fuji ecosystem. So when it was time to downsize my Nikon gear, I was watching all these XT1 and X100S and T users raving about their cameras and saying how they were now liberated from the whole Nikon, Canon, and big camera world. So I decided to rent a X100T just to see if I was still liking that image quality and that form factor. And I ended up really loving it again, and doing some research, ended up buying this Fujifilm X Pro 2. And at first, I kept my Nikon gear for a couple weeks, months, to end up selling it. As you know, if you follow me on the YouTube channel or my vlog or on my blog, you'll see the video where I explain what I did and why I did it. And yeah, so I'm now a proud Fujifilm shooter, and I don't look back. This is a very long answer to your question, Tyler, or sorry, John. But that's what I did, and that's my story, and that's why I now shoot with the Fujifilm ecosystem. And thank you, John. Thank you actually for asking the question. Tyler says, awesome. Thanks for the input, Fred. Keep up the live streams. I'll follow for sure. And if you do get the Rockin' on, please let me know, because I might actually be interested in the 12mm Rockin' on. Again, I've heard so many good things. So I'm about to hit the 40-minute mark. I wanted to do like kind of 45 minutes for my first one, again, just to get into the game, into the zone. If you guys like what you're seeing, give it a like. It will tell me that you like it and that you might want to hear other live stream or hang out with me, or just learn together as we all evolve in the creative world and in the Fujifilm ecosystem, because that's what I use now. But I can talk about other, like Nikon, other brands, because I've been shooting with multiple cameras over the past few years. So I'm just going to end with the last question from Nirvana, and that was also on one of my videos. And I'm going to read the comment. In the past, in the past, I was exactly like this guy. I had a zillion things in my bag. Since last year, I dumped everything only for a Fujifilm X100T, charge, battery, external hard drive, and MacBook Pro, nothing more. And guess what? I didn't miss anything. So this is from Niva 117. No, Niva 11. Sorry. And that was a great comment. Yeah, that's definitely one path, and a lot of photographer. I mean, if you think about Kevin Mullins, who shoots weddings with a X100, now he's shooting with the X100F, which is a tremendous, awesome camera that I'm thinking of getting, but I would have to sell something. I cannot own more than like, I don't know, one, two, three, four, five. I have five cameras right now, so this is too much for me. So if I would end up getting the X100F, I would probably sell the X Pro 2. I don't want to do it because I love this camera, but again, I mostly use the Fujifilm X-T2 now for a couple of reasons. But yeah, if I do get the X100F, I will let you know. But I'm with you, Neva. If you do get a camera that you love that helps you tell your story better, stick with it and ditch everything else. You don't need expensive gear. You don't need expensive cameras. I tend to like gear as much as I like art, as I like the process of making images and videos. So for me, these are all adding value to my creative process. But if I was stuck with this camera and this flippy screen, I would still take photos and tell stories. So again, it's not about the gear; it's about the stories. But of course, when you are inclined, technology inclined, if you like technology, you want to keep up, you want to make sure that you have the latest and greatest, but at the same time, never let it go into your creative process. I own these things because I use them. Some items actually I'm looking at right now and I'm like, oh, you know what, I haven't used them in the past 2 weeks. So question, maybe I should sell it, and maybe I should reinvest it in, well, I just did actually reinvest it in a video camera. As you can see, I'm doing a live stream on my webcam, on my iMac webcam. But this is about to change. I have the G85 from Panasonic on the way, so I'll be able to do better live stream and better YouTube videos. So again, this is to tell my story in a more efficient way. You don't need all that gear, but it certainly helps. So we're hitting the 45-minute mark. I want to thank you so much, especially Tyler, John, Adapted Lenses. Thank you so much, guys, for joining the chat tonight. This was my first chat, so I might not be good right now. I might say stupid stuff. I'm a bit nervous, of course, because this is live on the internet, and whatever stays on you, whatever happens on YouTube stays on YouTube forever. So I might look at that in like 2 years or even 2 weeks and say like, holy crap, why did I do that? But hey, it was fun. I learned a lot. I hope I could I did add value to some of your questions. If you do like what you're seeing, please leave a thumbs up. Again, it would tell me that you want to see more. I already have 3 thumbs up. Thank you so much. If you are interested in interacting, you can find me at Fred Ranger on all the platforms, and I'll be coming up with more videos very, very shortly on the YouTube channel. And until then, be happy, enjoy life, and enjoy your gear. Cheers.